looked like this. You see the two candidates, they have tables, there's a moderator in between. It's pretty straightforward and entirely civil, which is strange. This is a drawing of the plan for that stage, for that set design. You see a desk, you see the two chairs and the tables to the right, etc. But after the first debate, the second debate was handled by NBC. And NBC, for their set design, thought about it a little bit more through the lens of the camera rather than a kind of static one-point perspective, and designed a set that used a curving background like the first set, but then also took into account capturing reaction shots of the two candidates, which was a criticism of the first debate, was there is no way to see how each candidate reacted to what the other was saying. So they staged the debate according to how and where the cameras could see. The result was like any television set or film set, a lot of technical apparatus to produce a simple image which was broadcast over a small cathode ray screen. Okay, so the result of those sets, came to look like this. Here's the press corps watching one of the first debates. You see Kennedy and Nixon trading places on the monitor on the TV broadcast. Of course, it was broadcast on regular television. Here's a group at Jacqueline Kennedy's house, where she's assembled a number of people to watch these televised debates. It must have been strange to sit there and watch your husband on top of the fold-down desk on this electronic screen conducting a presidential debate. After the first and second debates, the third debate, the candidates decided they could not make their schedules align to be in the same room. And whether that's entirely true or not, I'm not sure. But either way, Richard Nixon was set to be in Los Angeles and John F. Kennedy was set to be in New York, and they decided they could do this over electronic networks. So the debate was scheduled to be joined electronically from those two positions, much like what we're doing right now. It was a mass electronic event with 64 million viewers in the United States. John F. Kennedy was in one studio in New York, an ABC studio. Richard Nixon was on an LA soundstage. They're 3,000 miles apart. George was tasked with designing this set. Here we see George Corrin with a model of the set that he designed for one of the two locations. It used gold fabric, wood grain panels, and standing podiums. They made sure that the fabric was all cut from the same mill, and it was shipped to both locations. All of the gold paint was mixed in New York and flown in cans by individuals to Los Angeles so that the two sets would use exactly the same paint. All of the lighting equipment in Los Angeles was replaced to match that in New York. And finally, AT&T long lines data experts were employed and consulted to make sure that the signal data could be transferred between both locations. The program was controlled controlled in Los Angeles, but obviously it was shot in both places. The signals were not simultaneous because you're 3,000 miles apart and transferring the information over a line. And so they were JFK was about 1/38 of a second behind Nixon, and so they took care of that in the television production. There were 12 cameras and feedback controlled audio in those situations. So as well, they even ran they ran tests of this entire system multiple times to make sure that it was actually going to be plausible. And they had stand-in actors. You get to decide which one's Nixon and which one's Kennedy. Anyway. Finally, when it came time to broadcast, the broadcast came off without a hitch. Here's a screen grab of Nixon on the left here and Kennedy on the right with their locations underneath them. I want to play, I hope this comes through okay. This is the beginning of the broadcast leading up to that first split screen moment.
Good evening. I'm Bill Shadell of ABC News. It's my privilege this evening to preside at this, the third in the series of meetings on radio and television of the two major presidential candidates. Now, like the last meeting, the subjects to be discussed will be suggested by questions from a panel of correspondents. Unlike the first two programs, however, the two candidates will not be sharing the same platform. In New York, the Democratic presidential nominee, Senator John F. Kennedy. Separated by 3,000 miles in a Los Angeles studio, the Republican presidential nominee, Vice President Richard M. Nixon. Now joined for tonight's discussion by a network of electronic facilities which permits each candidate to see and hear the other. Good evening, Senator Kennedy.
Good evening, Mr. Shadell.
And good evening to you, Vice President Nixon.
Good evening, Mr. Shadell.
And now...
Okay. Well, the tone is courteous. This is what it looked like in the New York studio, and so you had Kennedy debating a kind of phantom image or electronic image of Nixon shown to him on a monitor. It must have been strange. Okay. George Corwin continued to work with ABC for 13 years. He worked on sets, on-screen graphics, and various design projects. For example, here is George Corwin on the set of the election returns, I think 1964 this was. He's standing here with Peter Jennings, he was going to be the longtime TV news anchor for ABC. And George is holding the kind of number or apparatus. Here is that set in use with the younger Peter Jennings running it. And here is an on-air graphic that happened during George Corwin's time working at ABC. So in 1962, the network invited an American graphic designer who already had a large reputation to create a new logo, which we just saw there, and I'm sure probably everybody here is familiar with. It's this logo. Should be known that this lecture is in the course of the Gestalt class, so hopefully the students would identify some Gestalt principles in how this logo goes together. The designer was Paul Rand, and here's a portrait from at least a few years ago. Paul Rand in a sweatshirt. It's great. Oops, I'm gonna go back. Peretz Rosenbaum was born in Brooklyn in 1914. Painting signs for his father's grocery store led to studying design at Pratt Institute at night while attending public high school during the day for a more practical education. At Pratt, Rosenbaum assembled a portfolio of clean, modern design work and decided to modernize his name as well. Being Jewish, like being African American, at the time made working in design difficult, to say the least. For all of its social rhetoric and its mostly liberal practitioners, the profession has a dreadful track on diversity. Cloaking his Jewish identity, Rosenbaum took on the concise, advertising-ready moniker made up from two sets of 4 letters, Paul Rand. Paul Rand is perhaps best known for his corporate identities, and the logo marks he designed thoroughly exploit Gestalt principles. For example, his ABC logo motivates the figure and ground relationship and the repetition of circular forms in the shapes of the letters, and their negative spaces form a mark that kind of sears itself into your eyes and brain. That one is still in use, as you know. Also very well known is his IBM logo. Rand worked with IBM for years on a variety of projects. He initially adjusted the existing logo mark in 1956, modified it in 1960, and added these stripes in 1972. Not every project was a success for Paul Rand, however. He was commissioned to make the UPS, that certainly was a success, but he's also commissioned to redesign the logo type for Ford Motor Company, and this one never saw the light of day. It never got implemented. He also designed a identity for Westinghouse Electrical Company, which looked like this, and has a kind of characteristic Paul Rand quality to it, which is that it's built out of a set of legible component parts in specific relations to produce a coherent mark. This is very Gestalt. So much so that it even still says Westinghouse when it's split apart like this. You know, you still recognize it as Westinghouse. Here's a cover he made for Idea magazine, but which has some of that quality to it. Here is a rebus that I'm sure we all know for IBM. It's great. Here's an illustration Paul Rand made. And okay, this one's also a Paul Rand logo, Paul Rand identity. By 1985, Paul Rand was living and working outside New Haven, Connecticut. He was teaching at Yale University School of Art and was in great demand as a designer of corporate logos. These projects have large budgets and high stakes, and Rand knew it. When handling proposed new commissions, he would invite the potential commissioner, from what I understand, to meet at the International House of Pancakes, the IHOP, near his studio in Hamden, Connecticut, have breakfast and discuss their problem on neutral ground. Rand would then decide whether or not to accept the job, and his baseline fee was $100,000 by this time. The same year that Steve Jobs founded Next Computer Inc., which this is the logo for, after being fired from the company he founded, Apple Computer, by its board of directors. Jobs had a new idea that personal computers would only go so far, and he was interested in entering other markets with more powerful hardware. He wanted to make workstation computers, then priced out of reach of all but the largest organizations at $20,000 to $50,000. The next machine cost only $6,500 for a base model and was marketed to universities, which would make the powerful computers and software applications accessible to students and faculty. Jobs had long admired Paul Rand's work and invited Rand to work on this project. Rand agreed enthusiastically in this case. I don't even think a date at IHOP was required. He, like Jobs, and the new machines were modern, black, and austere. One was simply a cube. So here's an advertisement for an X computer. Here's Steve Jobs around that time. Jobs brought a team with him from Apple to Next, including graphic designer Susan Kerr, who appears many times in this book. As before, Kerr was responsible for the interface graphics in the new computer's operating system software, which we see a couple screen images of here. So this was after the initial Macintosh and prior to OS X, or more contemporary Macintosh desktop softwares, operating system, sorry. Okay, when proposing a new logo, Rand typically produced a small booklet, which is here, which collected his design research, exploration, and finally a single recommendation. These were really kind of proto slide decks and provide a clear look into the graphic design research and process, as well as a hopefully irrefutable argument to his clients for the proposed logo. The booklet provides a kind of peek behind the curtain. And that, I'm going to open that up here. Okay. I'll just show a few pages from, well, actually, just a few pages from that booklet to give you an idea, because we're going to look at something around this. So type studies, rationale about why one thing and not the other, as a kind of building up to an absolutely convincing singular argument for one logo, which is the logo, which hopefully they love, and that's it. Okay, that's the end of that. That is a sweet turtleneck. I've been scouring eBay for it and have not had any luck finding it, but I would like to. So nobody else go looking for it, please. Okay. Rand's visit to Next Computer to present this logo, this booklet, and present his logo, was miraculously captured on video. I'd like to share a part from that video It's probably 10 minutes long, I think, in total. I hope that it plays adequately. Maybe it's 8 minutes. In the part I'd like to share, the full staff is assembled to see what Rand's come up with. Here, Rand is actually assisted by Susan Kerr as he pulls the booklets out of the box. So I'm going to play